Glass delusion. Between 1380 and 1422, King Charles VI of France grappled with recurring bouts of mental illness, which shaped both his rule and his legacy. During his most severe episodes, he lost his grip on reality, unable to recall his name or remember he was king. At times his behavior was so erratic that he would sprint through the halls of his Parisian residence, forcing court officials to construct barriers to contain him. In one bizarre stretch lasting 5 months, he refused to bathe or change clothes. Yet, one particular delusion etched itself into history. Charles believed his body was made of glass. This wasn't a metaphorical fear, but a deeply entrenched conviction. To protect himself from shattering, he wore specially designed clothing reinforced with iron rods and avoided physical contact with others. He lived in constant terror, convinced that even the slightest touch could shatter him into pieces. This condition, later termed the glass delusion, was not unique to Charles VI. It emerged as a strange but pervasive mental disorder among Europe's elite during the late medieval and early Renaissance periods. The affliction also ensnared famed Russian composer Pyotr Tchaikovsky, who lived in fear that his head might detach while conducting due to the fragility of his neck. Another notable case involved a Bavarian princess who was haunted by the belief that she had swallowed a glass piano, a fragile object she feared would break within her. Even military leaders weren't immune. A Greek lieutenant general was executed for his failures in battle, partially attributed to his delusion that his legs were made of glass and therefore immobile. Historians and psychologists have long speculated about the roots of the glass delusion, often linking it to the cultural and social fabric of the time. Glass, a material both luxurious and fragile, symbolized the vulnerability and precarious status of the nobility. One professor of psychiatry described the phenomenon as humanity's tendency to mold delusions around the materials and advancements of their era. The Athenian Plague. In 430 BCE, Athens was a beacon of cultural and intellectual achievement, its city-state a powerful symbol of democracy and innovation. But in the midst of the Peloponnesian War, a devastating conflict with Sparta, an invisible enemy breached Athens' fortified walls. It was a plague of catastrophic proportions, killing an estimated 100,000 people, over a quarter of the city's population, and leaving an indelible scar on the history of the ancient world. Thucydides, the famed historian and one of the few survivors, chronicled the event in harrowing detail. He described the sudden onset of symptoms: violent heats in the head, redness and inflammation of the eyes, violent coughing, retching, and convulsions. The plague ravaged the city, overwhelming Athens' infrastructure. Corpses piled up in the streets, and basic sanitation collapsed, fueling the spread of the disease. The origins of the plague are thought to trace back to Athens' bustling port, where ships carrying vital food supplies also brought the deadly pathogen. The societal impact was immense. Social norms disintegrated as despair overtook the population. Some turned to hedonistic excess, believing death was inevitable, while others clung to religious rituals in search of salvation. Even Athens' esteemed leader Pericles succumbed to the illness, marking a turning point for the city. His leadership during the crisis remains a contentious topic among historians, with some blaming his policies for exacerbating the outbreak's toll. Ultimately, the plague weakened Athens to such an extent that it shifted the balance of power in the Peloponnesian War, sealing its eventual defeat to Sparta. The true nature of the Athenian plague remains one of history's unsolved mysteries. Early hypotheses pointed to typhoid fever, supported by DNA evidence from ancient graves. However, discrepancies in symptom descriptions have led some researchers to suggest diseases like Ebola, with its hemorrhagic symptoms resembling Thucydides' accounts. Despite centuries of investigation, the plague's precise identity eludes modern science. The king's evil and the royal touch. In the world of medieval medicine, Some treatments were as fascinating as the diseases they aimed to cure. One such illness was the king's evil, a condition marked by swollen, blackened lumps on the neck, often a sign of underlying infection. These growths, initially painless, could burst over time, leaving open wounds vulnerable to infection. Accompanying symptoms like fever and severe weight loss painted a grim picture of suffering for its victims. At the time, medical knowledge was rooted in the ancient theory of the four humours, which suggested that illnesses stemmed from imbalances in the body's fluids. The king's evil, known today as scrofula, was thought to result from bad blood pooling in the body or an excess of phlegm. But it wasn't just physicians who sought to treat the disease. Europe's monarchs stepped into the role of healers, fueled by the belief that they possessed divine powers. The royal touch became a widely accepted cure, especially in England and France. Kings and queens would lay their hands on the afflicted, believing their touch could drive out the disease. After the ritual, patients were often given a gold coin called an angel, worn around their neck as a charm to ward off future illness. Remarkably, this practice persisted for centuries, largely because scrofula often healed on its own. The disease's self-limiting nature allowed the royal touch to gain a reputation for miraculous success. Monarchs like King Henry IV of France took their role as healers seriously, with records suggesting he performed the ritual on over 1,500 individuals. However, as the Enlightenment began to challenge long-held beliefs about divine right and the supernatural, and as advancements in medicine offered more practical solutions, the practice gradually faded. The last known royal touch in England occurred in the early 18th century, performed by Queen Anne. By then, medical science had begun to identify scrofula as a form of tuberculosis affecting the lymph nodes. Today, this condition is effectively treated with antibiotics, though its history as the king's evil serves as a reminder of how deeply medicine and myth were once intertwined. Kokolistli, the Forgotten Plague. Overshadowed by infamous pandemics like the Black Death and smallpox, the Kokolistli epidemics stand as one of history's most devastating and mysterious disease outbreaks. The term Kokolistli, derived from the Nahuatl language of the Aztecs, means pestilence or plague, and it aptly describes a series of catastrophic epidemics that swept through Mesoamerica in the 16th century. The deadliest waves occurred between 1545 to 1548 and 1576 to 1580, coinciding with the aftermath of the Spanish conquest. These outbreaks compounded the devastation caused by smallpox, measles, and warfare, reducing the indigenous population by as much as 80% in some areas. Yet what makes Kokolistli particularly haunting is the mystery surrounding its cause. Historical accounts describe symptoms that struck terror into the hearts of survivors: unrelenting fevers, pounding headaches, vertigo, and intense abdominal and chest pain. Victims often succumbed rapidly, leaving little chance for recovery. Despite its horrifying impact, the exact pathogen responsible for Kokolistli remains unidentified. Modern advancements in genetic research have begun to shed light on this centuries-old enigma. By extracting ancient DNA from the teeth of victims buried in mass graves, researchers have identified traces of Salmonella enterica, specifically the Paratyphi C strain. This bacterium, which causes enteric fever, matches many of the symptoms described in 16th century accounts. However, the discovery raises more questions than it answers. How did a bacterial infection of this nature spread so extensively, given the limited transmission methods of the time? Some historians suggest that environmental factors played a crucial role. Severe droughts during this period led to widespread malnutrition and weakened immune systems, creating fertile ground for the disease to thrive. Still, some inconsistencies remain. Not all symptoms of Coccolistli align with those typically caused by Salmonella, leaving the door open for alternative explanations. Could another pathogen, or a combination of factors, have been at play? Water elf disease, a medieval mystery. Long before elves became the graceful beings of Tolkien's imagination, medieval Britons saw them as malevolent creatures capable of inflicting harm on humans and livestock alike. Their mischief, believed to manifest in mysterious ailments, was often blamed for unexplained pains or illnesses. One such affliction was known as water elf disease. This condition, steeped in superstition, was thought to begin with elf shot, where invisible arrows from these mythical beings caused sharp pains. If left untreated, it could escalate to water elf disease, a malady so feared that Anglo-Saxons devised a unique blend of medicine and magic to combat it. An ancient metrical charm described its symptoms in grim detail: blackened fingernails, dimming eyes, and a downward gaze that reflected the afflicted's despair. The cure? A potion brewed from a dozen herbs mixed with ale and holy water, followed by the recitation of specific incantations. These chants were believed to imbue the remedy with healing powers, ensuring the ailment neither spread nor worsened. While the mystical elements of water elf disease treatments are captivating, modern science offers a more grounded explanation. Researchers suggest that the symptoms align with endocarditis, a bacterial infection of the heart valve. This life-threatening condition, caused by bacteria entering the bloodstream, can cause fatigue, fever, and discoloration, making it a plausible candidate for the medieval diagnosis. Are these ancient plagues and afflictions truly solved, or do they hold secrets waiting to be uncovered? History may not always provide clear answers, but it leaves behind stories that continue to fascinate and inspire. If you're intrigued by videos like these, hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts in the comments. Let us know what mysteries you want us to explore next.